Hit singles can catapult an artist into the spotlight, but that doesn't guarantee a successful album. In this video, we'll look at 8 flop albums that had successful singles. Endless Summer Vacation by Miley Cyrus. Miley Cyrus's Endless Summer Vacation was released on March 10, 2023 and launched with the record-breaking single Flowers. The song debuted on number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and stayed there for 8 consecutive weeks, becoming one of the biggest global hits of the year. Flowers also broke streaming records at the time, now sitting on 2.5 billion Spotify streams. It has been certified 7 times platinum in the US, and the momentum of the lead single increased the hype for the album, with many fans expecting it to be a blockbuster return. However, the album's overall performance didn't live up to the massive expectations. Endless Summer Vacation debuted on number 3 on the Billboard 200, with 103,000 album equivalent units sold in its first week, a respectable start, but it dropped off in the next weeks. Despite the popularity of Flowers, follow-up singles like River and Jaded failed to reach the top 40, but the final single, Used to Be Young, went on to peak on number 8 on the Hot 100. Critics were mixed to positive on the album, with a Metacritic score of 79 out of 100, but it failed to dominate year-end lists or award shows. Sometimes a hit single is all you need to have a successful album, but in this case, Endless Summer Vacation didn't live up to expectations. Changes by Justin Bieber. Justin Bieber's Changes, released on Valentine's Day 2020, was his long-awaited comeback after a 5-year hiatus following the era-defining album Purpose, so expectations were sky-high. The album's lead single Yummy was a disappointing start. Even though it debuted on number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100, Justin failed to get it to number 1, even though he tried everything. The desperation left a sour taste in people's mouths and tainted the era. The follow-up, Intentions featuring Quavo, performed well, peaking on number 5 on the Hot 100 and staying in the top 10 for 19 weeks. It also earned 4 times platinum certification. However, the album Changes was poorly received. It had a Metacritic score of 57 out of 100, with reviews calling it monotonous and lifeless. Especially compared to Bieber's previous albums, it failed to live up to expectations. The album even alienated his die-hard fans. Despite debuting on number 1 on the Billboard 200 with 231,000 album equivalent units sold, Changes quickly plummeted in sales and had little staying power. The project was largely absent from year-end lists and award buzz, with even Bieber himself criticizing the Grammy committee for miscategorizing it as a pop album rather than R&B. Changes is widely considered as one of Justin's worst albums, and the successful singles did not save it. My Love Is Your Love by Whitney Houston. Whitney Houston's My Love Is Your Love, released in November 1998, marked her return after an 8-year gap between albums. The project leaned heavily into modern R&B and hip-hop production, and it produced major hits, most notably Heartbreak Hotel, featuring Faith Evans and Kelly Price, which peaked on number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100 and was certified platinum by the RIAA. The follow-up, It's Not Right, It's Okay, peaked on number 4 on the Hot 100 and won a Grammy for Best Female R&B Vocal Performance in 2000. Another standout, the Wyclef Jean-produced title track, reached number 4 on the Hot 100 and number 2 in the UK. Despite a string of successful singles, the album underperformed commercially compared to Whitney's standards. It debuted on number 13 on the Billboard 200 with 123,000 copies sold in its first week. While it eventually reached 4 times platinum status in the US, it paled in comparison to her 1985 debut and her 1987 follow-up Whitney, which both went diamond. Overseas, it did better, but it showed her decline going into a new millennium. Critically, My Love Is Your Love was praised for modernizing Whitney's sound, but it was a commercial disappointment, especially compared to Whitney's historic sales on her previous albums. Kiss by Carly Rae Jepsen. Carly Rae Jepsen's debut mainstream album Kiss, released on September 14, 2012, was propelled by the global juggernaut Call Me Maybe. The song became a cultural phenomenon, spending 9 weeks on number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and topping charts in more than 15 countries. It went diamond in the US and is widely regarded as one of the defining pop songs of the 2010s. The success of Call Me Maybe put Carly on the map and set her up for a successful career. Despite this explosive single, Kiss failed to sustain the momentum. The album had only sold around 289,000 copies in the US, a relatively poor showing considering the single's dominance. The second single, Good Time with Owl City, also performed well, peaking at number 8 on the Billboard Hot 100, but couldn't build momentum for the album. In retrospect, Kiss is viewed more as the start of a journey than a defining album. Carly would go on to become a critical darling on her later works like Emotion, but Kiss remains a textbook example of an album overshadowed by a mega hit. Heaven and Hell by Ava Max. Ava Max's Heaven and Hell was one of the most anticipated pop debuts of 2020, following the massive success of her 2018 breakout hit Sweet by Psycho, which topped the charts in over 22 countries and peaked at number 10 on the Billboard Hot 100. Additional singles like Kings and Queens also performed well, reaching number 13 in the UK and earning platinum certification in the US. These singles helped build anticipation for the album. Despite the single's success, Heaven and Hell underperformed in terms of overall album impact. It debuted at number 27 on the Billboard 200 and peaked at number 2 on the UK albums chart, but the sales were modest, considering the streaming numbers of its singles. In its first week in the US, it moved only 25,000 album equivalent units, a low figure for an artist who was getting all the hype. The album's streaming performance was disproportionately reliant on previously released singles. Over 75% of the total streams came from pre-album singles, leaving the rest of the project overlooked. Ava Max is a singles artist and doesn't care if her album underperformed. She just cares about releasing the next hit single. 31 Minutes to Take Off by Mike Posner. Mike Posner burst onto the pop scene in 2010 with the release of his debut single Cooler Than Me, which peaked at number 6 on the Billboard Hot 100 and sold over 3 million digital copies in the US. With its electropop production and college radio origins, the song became a summer smash and positioned Mike Posner as a promising new artist. The success of the single created anticipation for his debut album, 31 Minutes to Take Off, which dropped in August 2010. Despite the strong lead single, the album debuted at only number 8 on the Billboard 200, selling just 29,000 copies in its first week, which was a commercial failure, as it quickly lost momentum. Follow-up singles like Please Don't Go, which peaked at number 16, and Bow Chicka Wow Wow, which peaked at number 30 on the Hot 100, were decently successful, but the project ultimately sold around 200,000 copies in the US, which was a disappointment considering the success of the lead single. 31 Minutes to Take Off is a classic example of an album that couldn't capitalize on a breakout single and deliver a cohesive project. Sean Kingston by Sean Kingston. Sean Kingston made a major splash in 2007 with his debut single Beautiful Girls, which reached number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and was certified 2 times platinum by the RIAA. With its retro sample of Benny King's Stand By Me and its infectious rhythm, the song became a global hit, positioning him as a teenage rising star. Hopes were high for his self-titled debut album, which arrived in July 2007. Despite debuting at number 6 on the Billboard 200 and eventually being certified gold in the US, the album underperformed in relation to the success of his singles. It opened with sales of 13,000 copies in its first week, which was very low. Beyond Beautiful Girls, singles like Me Love and Take You There also charted on the Hot 100. Considering how massive the debut single was, the performance of the album was disappointing. The project also lacked a strong critical reception, with reviews often labeling it overly reliant on pop formulas. Ultimately, Sean Kingston, the album, was more of a vessel for hit singles rather than a memorable album. Nothing But the Beat by David Guetta. David Guetta's Nothing But the Beat is a perfect example of a single-heavy album where the individual songs were successful, but as a holistic project, it failed. The album produced a lot of smash hits. Titanium featuring Sia reached number 1 in the UK and number 7 on the US Billboard Hot 100, ultimately going 4 times platinum in the US. Without You featuring Usher also cracked the top 10, and Turn Me On featuring Nicki Minaj and Where Them Girls At featuring Flo Rida are international dance anthems. The singles alone turned Guetta into a global household name, bringing EDM to the forefront. A 22-track, 2-disc release was widely criticized for lacking cohesion and substance, despite all the star power, featuring artists like Chris Brown, Jennifer Hudson, Lil Wayne, Akon, and Jessie J. The album debuted at number 5 on the Billboard 200 with just 55,000 first-week units in the US. It did eventually achieve platinum certification, but that was largely due to the individual success of its singles, rather than a strong full album consumption. Many of the non-single tracks went unnoticed, and the album had a low replay value beyond the hits. Over time, the singles remained culturally relevant, but the album as a whole faded from memory. Which flop albums that had successful singles did I miss? Tell me in the comments below.